Welcome, everybody. It is April 10th, 2024. This is now 9:30 a.m. East Coast, United States. You are listening to Business on the Block. This is episode 75, AI Runs Out of Internet. Today on the pod, we're going to discuss where do these companies get their AI training data. You may not want to know where the Soylent Green is coming from. We'll share another jaw-dropping prophecy from Elon Musk. And crypto payments take a leap forward with a game-changing collaboration. I actually think this could redefine the future of crypto transactions. This is Business on the Block is your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Welcome back. Conspiracy Corner is resolved now that your internet is working.
So this is a bit of a reunion episode. For those who don't know, I've been traveling on business the last 2 weeks and tried twice unsuccessfully to join this show, even though, and so we believe there's an organized conspiracy against us, but we're going to overcome. So we're going to go.
People saw the apparition of you as you came in and then left almost instantaneously.
Let's start off with story number one. Tech companies find the edge of the internet. In their hunt for AI training data, the tech giants have harvested almost every bit of data that content is available on the internet right now. They are warning that high-quality data could run out in the next 2 years, and to avoid a drag on the growth of these companies, they are now sourcing data to train the AIs in legally gray areas. Right? This is coming to us from the Morning Brew, and they're discussing how there's a variety of tools we'll tell you about in a second, but these companies are basically running out of training material. So they'll have to start creating their own. With limited human-created content left to scrape, companies have reportedly begun developing synthetic information, and that basically means they're using AI to create content that will then be used to train that same AI. Thoughts on this one, Michelle? I'd love to hear what you think is going to happen with these tech companies at the edge of the internet.
So it was probably the first episode we did after ChatGPT was launched where really we should have our conspiracy hats on, because Mike said at the time, who's pulling the strings behind the scenes of this outfit? Where have they got their information from? How's it been programmed? What are they doing? All of that stuff. So now we find out that they've actually all been doing what we said or thought they were doing, but they denied until right now.
Sounds like conspiracy to me.
Well, I certainly think they conspired together. Whether or not, as the article says, and there's other stories out there around this at the moment as well. And if you have a look at them, the reason why Google isn't jumping up and down because YouTube videos have been scraped is because they're doing the same thing. They're doing similar things with other people's content. So everyone's kind of got sticky jam on their fingers from having their fingers in the jam jar. And now they've gone, oh, hang on.
So just to expand on that for the listeners, OpenAI has allegedly developed a tool that transcribes audio from YouTube videos. So they're trying to open up a new source of data, even though this will violate the copyrights of the videos that technically Google owns. Anyway, Mike, what do you think about this whole concept of we've run out of data to train these AIs, so we're going to make our own?
Well, we're going to make our own AI that's going to formulate content that the AI is then going to analyze. This is the snake eating its own tail, right? I mean, at some point, where does it end up? We talk about this on several occasions about the data being the primary source, of value that, the internet has really taught us to either keep close to our chest or in order to exploit for marketing and business purposes. And it was only a matter of time before AI really jumped on that wagon, and we need to understand where that data goes. However, when you say you run out of internet or run out of space, this is essentially where blockchain comes in and sort of, I don't want to say becomes the superhero, but basically a saving grace in where some of that information could potentially be stored and then, I guess, archived in order to retrieve later on. So those of us who have played in the AI sandbox, everything comes at a cost when these things get generated. The use of tokens, for example, and that's what the terminology of the, I'll use the term currency in air quotes, but that's really the fuel that runs a lot of these AI systems. Where do those tokens get deposited once the image is, I guess, produced as part of an output? And then where does all the information for those tokens get stored? I think that's really what we're talking about as far as quote unquote running out of the internet. But what you're talking about with YouTube, they are very protective of copyright. In fact, on certain things, if you share YouTube videos, you have the potential to be banned or demonetized yourself. So it's going to be interesting on how they're going to be able to police that, because I forget the number, but it's something insane. There's not enough people or hours in the day to monitor all content that's posted on YouTube on a daily basis. So how are they going to monitor all that? AI. They're going to create their own algorithms to monitor that, to see if there's any copyright issue. Before you know it, again, everything is feeding into the same engine in this AI system.
So I
think too, and the other thing is that, plenty of times, like my kids have created videos or something and they put a track to it, a copyrighted song. And if they've gone over the 15 seconds or whatever it is that you're allowed to only play copyrighted music for, they've had their YouTube videos taken down, right? Because they might have done 20 seconds, say, instead of 15. I can't remember the exact length. But, in those cases, copyright is copyright and they enforced it and whatever. And now it's kind of like, well, okay, it's okay for you to ban us from doing something that's not legal, but you can actually do it yourselves. There's certainly a double-edged sword here, isn't there?
Rules for me or rules for thee and not for me. That's not Google's way of doing things.
So 2 points I'm going to add. Number one, for those who don't know, there are more than 500 hours of video uploaded to YouTube every minute. So yes, Mike, it would need to be some sort of AI. It used to be algorithmically monitored. At this point now, it'll be AI. Heck, Google invented their own AI, so they're fine with that. But where this goes on the business side, and to the point of this podcast, the business impact of this is that companies now are out of the legal way of getting data, and they are either going to go the illegal route, which is what you're talking about, Michelle, or they're going to have to start buying things like companies for the content that they own, which is always how business worked in the old days, right? When Disney wants to put out Star Wars stuff, they got to buy Lucasfilm. So Meta has reportedly been discussing buying Simon & Schuster, the publisher, for the information contained in their books. That's
interesting.
Right. There's going to be a business impact because there's, quote unquote, no more free data. And that's what I think we want to keep our eyes open for.
Well, we talk about the personal experience, and I guess the people's understanding of what information they're voluntarily giving up by participating on any of these giant platforms. And if you ask anybody, you just walk down the street and you pull someone aside and say, "Hey, I'm going to ask a couple questions about your own data. Would you mind answering them?" 99% of the people would say, "No, I don't want my data harvested. I just want I want to be private." But they don't understand really what that means. And every single interaction that they have on the internet, whether it's viewing something in passing, whether it's a website that they visit, an ad that they accidentally click on, that's segmenting them into a particular data category that can in turn be sold by Google, Facebook, Instagram, it is Facebook, like Twitter. All these different pieces can ultimately be categorized and repurposed and repackaged to be sold. Again, AI is on that same track. It's just catching up to what we've already seen as far as these tech giants and what they've been able to monetize with. And again, now this tool is being embedded in every single aspect of our lives now very quickly, right? Every single website has AI integration. Every single phone is coming out with AI integration. I just had an update on my calls. Like for my phone, like my actual calls. So the one purpose for my phone updated itself with AI. So now if I'm on the phone with somebody in Abu Dhabi, the phone while I'm on it will translate the conversation for me. I didn't ask for that. But again, this is all about monitoring and data mining. Where that gets stored, I think, is the point of what we're talking about here. And that's where we can reintroduce concepts and technological advancements like blockchain.
This is a new version of the same game. I agree with you, Mike. But do we expect anything otherwise? Like this has always been meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Google and go ahead.
We're insane, right?
They've
This is
been
the definition of insanity. We're creating the same issue over and over again.
It's the business world works, and I agree with you. Like, it sucks that this is the case, but monetizing personal data has been going on for 25 years on social media. So AI is just going to be an easier way for them to do that. And by the way, people know this, and they're okay with it because of the ease of use.
Well, the privacy thing for people is they just think, oh yes, I want my name, address, and telephone number to be private. That's where people think, oh, that's privacy, right? When your phone, when it says click here to accept cookies or click here to accept our terms and conditions, etc., on your phones or on your computers or whatever, that people don't think that that's about their privacy, but that is in fact the way their privacy is being eroded by these tech giants.
So I don't think that's going to change, Michelle. I don't mean to be.
No, I don't think it is. But people stopped on the street, privacy, blah blah blah. They go, oh no, that's very bad. But that same person that day's probably clicked yes to cookies 3 times on some random websites they've gone to.
And they're also the same people that will buy into the marketing play that Apple put out, that privacy is our number one priority. Meanwhile, check this box to accept everything that we're taking from you.
Right. The points that it really struck me from this article, 2 points. Number one was that if there's no more information that they can scrape, they make their own. To me, that's concerning, because you have machines that you're tailing the snake, whatever, Mike. I don't think I can trust an AI when it's creating its own. It already hallucinates. So now what? On the other side of that argument, for those who listen to our competitors over at the All In podcast, they are talking about it doesn't matter because the truth eventually percolates to the top. That if you have crappy data, ultimately still it will filter to the best. And that if you believe nothing's new under the sun, it works out.
Well, again, if we believe the root definition of what this AI system is intended to do, and that's to learn, right? Quote unquote, learn. We can only assume it's going to get better. Now, if, again, we've proven the model many times here on this show about how many fingerprints and human interaction there still are within this AI system. There are a lot of bad actors and I guess malpractices that are still going to exploit the technology and people's understanding of what the technology is. We called out Google. Speaking of YouTube, we called out Google with Gemini for that very reason.
I remember.
And it wasn't just us, right? I mean, people saw through that very quickly, and it became viral, and it almost crushed. And I would argue it hasn't even bounced back yet. But they are still going to move forward, and they're still going to impregnate all aspects of our digital lives with this technology, whether we like it or not. And again, we will not understand the detriment of where this data harvesting lies for arguably another 10, 15 years, similar to what we did with Facebook. We thought it was our own personal diary. I'm going to share, a video of my kid walking for the first time, and I'm going to generate some likes, and I'm going to tell people I'm at the mall. And, that's what it originally was. And then it became this supercomputer that allowed everybody to just basically get monitored and segmented in order to retarget them with different opportunities later on.
I'm going to walk you down off the ledge, Mike. You know why I'm not concerned? And it is the purpose of this program. Blockchain is the answer for this. When you can put your content on a blockchain first, you can then see and know everything. It then gets regulated effectively, meaning you don't have to worry about them just stealing your data. You're going to put in there what you're okay with them stealing or not, and they can't access it otherwise.
That's painting with a very, very broad brush, man, because number one, most people are not going to understand how to even access elements on the blockchain. That's number one. Number two, you're talking about 500 hours a minute of content on one platform. Who's going to sift through every single one of those hash transactions?
You don't have to do it. Like if I put all my content, I post a bunch of stuff. So do you, Michelle. You're a content marketing queen. Like we put content out, And before you post any content, you put it through your blockchain, like you listed on your own blockchain or whatever the platform's blockchain is. That's a way where they can't just mass scrape stuff that you don't know about.
So you're telling me YouTube or Google or Alphabet, whatever the hell we're going to call them,
Well,
they're going to agree to take content that's only posted from your chain so that you control the data now? I highly doubt it.
This is the whole concept of Web3, though. Who controls your personal data? Like the blockchain.
And that's been one of the biggest barriers. These companies don't want to give up that control.
I agree, but I'm saying people are now wising up to the fact that if they're just scraping all the data, you guys are really focused on the concerns around privacy here. It didn't strike me as such. I think that blockchain provides a solution. My bigger concern is not so much that they're stealing our data. They've been doing that forever. My bigger concern is the information I'm going to get from a fake AI synthetically programmed is not going to be good.
I mean, I don't disagree. Again, it's just a matter of who's going to allow it. So if they don't allow that data to be mined from an individual blockchain, then the whole point of the technology is irrelevant. People are still going to want their content posted, and they're going to click that accept all box regardless.
Yeah, that's not going to change. People aren't going to change. Make it easy for them, and they'll just say yes to whatever it is.
But I think internally for this, I'm running out of internet conversation, blockchain is still the answer.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, there's something called the dead internet theory. And this is not, I didn't really prepare anything for this, but it's basically the concept of the internet itself becomes fake after a while because there's more fake stuff than real stuff on it. And so, like misinformation when there's 80% of it and only 20% is true, like then you don't, what's the internet then?
You can
Isn't
search
that
for
Twitter now?
anything. No, but I mean, Twitter, yes, but you can search for anything and find some sort of a justification on why it's accurate. Why is the sky pink? Well, according to the way that the sun, bounces off the moon, and like there's so many different answers that you will get to prove some sort of a theory. This has been since the dawn of the internet.
I know, but with the concept of a wackadoo person putting nut job stuff on the internet is not new. But AIs that are manufacturing data at scale and mass, we've already seen what these things can do. Well,
who do they learn from? These same wackadoos.
It's going to change the internet, is my point. I don't know how yet, but it's something that's on my mind. All right, I think
that's just a quip for the last bit of that. Look at what the flat earthers had to say about the eclipse this week.
Flat earthers, right? All right, I'm taking us into story number 2. All right, so for this one, we're going to delve a little bit into the conspiracy world here, folks. This is coming off The Guardian. Elon Musk predicts AI smarter than people by next year. So when asked recently about the timeline for the development of AGI, artificial general intelligence, Elon recently stated, and I quote, "If you define artificial general intelligence as smarter than the smartest human, I think it's probably next year." He went on to describe how last year the development of AI was constrained by the availability of chips. This year, it's constrained by the voltage transformer supply. And next year, he expects it'll just simply be electricity in general. There won't be enough. So, sorry, I'm forgetting my conspiracy corner. And so I actually think this is less conspiratorial than you guys seem to think. But I'm a believer that AGI is a lot closer than you guys think. Mike, let's start with you on this. What do you think about Elon Musk saying that we're going to have machines smarter than people by next year?
So let's define what the term smart means. Like that I think is the biggest thing that we'd have to, throw on the table first. Is smart just basically regurgitating facts that you find somewhere else? Because that's what we've been taught at school, right? Like memorize this and regurgitate it on a piece of paper to get, some letter that you can graduate with and hang another piece of paper on your wall. If that's the definition of smart, then AI is well more advanced than people anyway, because it's trained to scour different pieces around the internet and scotch tape it together in order to provide an output. So if that's our definition of smart, then fine. But if we're talking about opinionated thesis predicated off of those, that research, and it is in some regard research, that is something that I disagree with him on. I don't think that, at least the people who are still capable of their own thoughts they will not be able to compete with something in the AI realm for quite some time, because it still needs to understand how we will be willing to accept a predictive opinion that AI can pump out as an output.
We get a comment from Jakob, by the way, of Mike, why are you so angry on that last session? I want to say this. I don't think, like, we've already hit the point where you can't tell the difference between what's AI sometimes, right? These pictures of which one's real, which one's fake, you guys see this every day. And then you're also reaching a point where the AIs are able to interact with human-like inflection, right? Whether it's written or spoken. So I think we're at the point where, yeah, this thing is basically as smart as humans. And that happened in no time at all. So when this becomes the fact that they are smarter than us, however you define smart, we're no longer the dominant species on the planet. That's, like, anthropologically speaking, there's a point to be made there. Michelle, what are your thoughts on this? Elon Musk, I know your thoughts on Elon. What are your thoughts about his concepts?
Elon. I think that newspapers, if they were smart, should stop reporting all the crap that he says all the time. But that aside, the problem we see, and we know because we've, discussed it in many episodes, and we're all using AI and all of that, that it may be smarter or as smart and ultimately smarter than humans, but it isn't human, and you can tell that it's not human, and you can still tell that it's not human. It doesn't have empathy. It doesn't have kindness. It doesn't come across in the same way as a human would. It doesn't have nuance. It doesn't change the way it behaves based on how the other person's reacting. Because of that, ultimately, just because it is, or it could be, the smartest non-human that there ever was, doesn't mean that means it's the end of civilization as we know it.
So interestingly, to your earlier point, Mike, that there's no generally accepted definition of what is AGI. Like, for those who aren't aware, the AI community debates this fiercely all the time. For years, it's been, when is it quote unquote smarter? When is it smart? And when is it actually thinking? And when is it just regurgitating? To your point, Michelle, I also agree. Yeah, it's not the end of society. I'm not a buyer into the Terminator thing, but it is an interesting new dynamic in humanity's history. Like, that sounds big and heavy, but it is true.
I wouldn't go as far as to call it a species either, because we can simply just unplug it and then bye-bye AI, right? So
I've seen The Matrix. I know what happens.
Yeah, I get it. We become farmed, just for our little bolts of electricity in our brain. But the
open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Yeah,
I can't do that, Michelle.
I mean, again, I think that the term smart is really what we need to focus on here, right? I mean, and we're using this AI as something that we're think is new, and we've never seen before, but we've seen it just under a different name in the form of an algorithm. And an algorithm, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, I mean, the whole concept behind the code within that algorithm is to quote unquote be smarter than us, because it can pull the information that we're looking for instead of us going out and finding it ourselves. Is it smarter because it does it quicker, or is it just more capable of doing it? And again, I think that there's way too many fingerprints on the AI to classify it as smarter. And I said this part way back when this first really launched with GPT. We have to be careful to not train our mindset that the output provided by AI is the way that we should be thinking. Meaning, we can't start thinking along the lines of whatever this AI system pumps out. We still need to keep the values of our own human morals and I guess our opinions, really, really front and center in order to combat different pieces behind AI. Now, if there's factual things that AI is going to be useful for as far as finding information, yeah, I mean, we gave a list of different, jobs and industries that are at threat right now because of, biased, information that they pump out that's opinionated, that, if people are just looking for the black and white facts, they're going to be able to go into AI for that information. The news, lawyers, sorry, but, your time as, front and center and, being the quote unquote experts of the world are coming to an end with the advancement of this technology, because those are two things that definitely need to be cookie cutter, black and white, no opinions needed. And we're going to see the evolution of that. So if that's us, calculating it to be smarter, then I agree with him.
So I had a conversation this week with an attorney friend of ours, we all know, about the evolution of knowledge work, the disappearance of things like content marketing as a job, attorneys, traders on Wall Street, wealth advisors, all these big data-driven things are already changing. This is not a speculation. I think the popular belief right now among the AI community is that AGI, we get there within 3 to 5 years. That is generally, you get some out there as far as 20, some as soon as 8 months. But generally speaking, most normal people would say next few years. Musk is saying next year. I think that the concept doesn't matter how we define it. Splitting hairs here. We have to get used to a world where jobs are going to change. You're going to have a different type of view of what it means to be human. I mean, it's like I said, it's weird, but this is just the way it is. It's no different from when we had advances in technology, like the evolution of the wheel or fire, like the internet changed the world. Sorry, we'll be fine, but you're going to comment.
The control of information.
Spanner makes a good point in the Bolt chat about the fact that, the education system that we have was created 150 years ago.
Don't even get me started.
And it was to, create workers who could work in factories to, make the rich richer.
I love
and
Spanner.
all the people who, all of that stuff.
This is Spanner. This is exactly, Seth Godin has talked about this in he's got a talk he gives called "What is School For?" And it discusses the interchangeable parts concept in factory work is now interchangeable people. So Mike doesn't show up for work on Monday, and we rotate in Michelle, and we fire Michelle, we bring in Mark, we fire Mark when he gets too old. That concept is what school builds, that interchangeable workers in a role. And AI has put that on its ear, right? You guys, I feel like the school system is not only broken, it's retarding the children in the truest sense of that word. You have to, the creator economy and what we're doing here is really where education lies. Am I crazy?
No, but again, it's having a conversation, which I feel again is anti everything in the educational industry as it is. So his point of the educational system 150 years being fractured or broken.
He's right.
It's not inaccurate. It's 100% correct.
I support you 100%, Spanner.
And again, the conversations that should be taking place in those institutions, which lead to better ideas and better strategies for those ideas, are, they have been replaced forever with read this textbook and regurgitate it to show that you understand the information. But there's no real dialogue that goes into that concept. Now, I understand that, there's logistic issues at play, but we're talking about 500 hours of content being pumped out on YouTube a minute. If you don't know how to do something, the chances are you can literally find a video that would explain how to do it step by step out there. Right. So what is education other than, progressing your knowledge, your interest, and of course, your skill set in whatever career path you're in.
Yeah.
And, just because you have a fancy piece of paper from a place that you got yourself into lifetime debt with, what's the value in that other than financial for those institutions and funneling money through, very powerful individuals and organizations?
There's a whole show on this that we can dig into. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, I've got a 15-year-old who's currently studying for GCSE exams here in the UK. And he's doing really well with his revision, but sometimes he'll just go why am I doing this? What is what is this for? And he was talking to one of his older brothers, and one of them said, the last time I had to work out the area of a square was 12 years ago when he was doing his exams. Now, I'm not saying that, people should know how to do those sorts of things, but ultimately, depending on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, these AI tools that come out now make knowing how to do that calculation absolutely irrelevant. All you actually need to know how to do is to prompt the AI to give you the answer.
Right.
I'll never forget this. I watched a video when I think it was Siri first came out, of a kid being filmed by his mom from the living room. The kid is sitting at the kitchen table doing his math homework, and he didn't understand it. I don't think he cared. But he didn't understand what he was doing. He's literally at the kitchen table, Siri, what's 4 times 2? Like, that was him doing his homework. Now, again, educational system, whatever you want to call it, when I was going to school, they didn't let me use calculators when I was doing engineering programs. And the reason that they gave was, if the world explodes tomorrow, who's going to build it back? If you have to rely on these tools and this technology and you don't understand what you're doing, what good are you?
We've already passed that.
We've well past that.
Nobody knows how these AIs are working. Honestly, the firms, there's an interesting interview with the CEO of Google. They don't really know how they call it the black box. No idea. My point is this, though. The school system is so broken, it's hurting people right now. And I think, and I'm like you, Michelle, I have a college educational bound kid soon, looking at universities. I said to my wife last night, a little personal insight here, no matter what they end up majoring in or what they graduate degree-wise, I'm going to have to end up teaching him the stuff that we're doing here today, because that's where in a world where there's roles and jobs are going to disappear, and there'll be 80% of people that just want to do their thing. But if you really want to get ahead, creating value is not being taught. Like, the concept of how to create value for other people. That's what school's about.
Again, not only other people, but for the organizations that these students will ultimately go work for. And, I think that's the factory example that you provided earlier that's really lost in today's workforce as well. I mean, is a worker more valuable to a company if they understand how the company needs to operate, or if they've regurgitated shit on a piece of paper that they read from a textbook from some institution, that all of a sudden they still have to go into the company and understand how it operates? So in fact, there was 4 years of wasted work life and potential income that individual could have achieved, and the company could have benefited from as well.
Right.
All predicated around a system that we almost feel is a necessity at this point. I mean, it really was never that. I don't think it was ever intended to be that way, but it became a business opportunity for these institutions.
It always does. All right, we've strayed far from Elon Musk and the superhuman AGI here, but it's an interesting concept. We'll explore this in a future episode, I sense. I'm going to take us into story number 3, which finally brings us around to some blockchain. All right, so this is coming off of the PR Newswire. Blockchain.com and MetaMask are partnering to enable crypto payments through MetaMask. So crypto payment firm Blockchain.com has announced a groundbreaking integration. They're going to be partnering with MetaMask, which is the world's leading self-custodial platform. It's a fancy word for a crypto wallet. And this partnership enables seamless crypto payments for millions using the MetaMask wallet. So that basically means if you have a MetaMask wallet, it used to just be a place to store your stuff, like a bank account. Now it can connect directly and use it for payments through blockchain.com, which is a very well-established platform. So you have this connectivity that's now starting to happen in the DeFi world that we've always had in the banking system, TradFi. Thoughts on this, Michelle? What do you think about the evolution of blockchain.com partnering with MetaMask?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we had another story on, didn't we, about partnering up for, I can't even, just completely gone out of my head now.
MetaMask paired up with, they're reporting to the IRS. I remember that one.
Yeah, that's probably not the pairing I was thinking of, but, it might have been Ledger were doing something with someone. So, it's an interesting evolution, isn't it? So they were quite siloed originally, different wallets, whether it was a hot wallet, a cold wallet, those sorts of things over the 2021, 2022 type, craze, because people were getting, wallets left, right and center and for different chains and all of that stuff. And then we started seeing, when the crypto winter came, that these businesses were going, okay, now that we've had our fun with people, trading voluminously, all the NFTs and everything, how are we going to, what does the long-term future look like for our product? And in this particular case, MetaMask has sensibly decided that being able to make crypto payments with the MetaMask wallet is the next step in the evolution of not only keeping the customers that they have, who have NFTs, etc., on their wallets already, but also expanding the reach of their business by doing this and increasing the amount of money that they make and their revenue as well.
Mike, what do you think about blockchain.com partnering with MetaMask?
So, in honor of our pre-show conversation, I kept
you still have your hat on.
my conspiracy hat on, and that's for you, buddy. This type of step, whether you want to call it forward or to the side, this is another step closer to our prediction about these elements being embedded directly within the hardware. Google and I guess Apple, they've figured out ways to integrate the tap to pay concept. And what does that do? That charges a credit card that they have on file. So the transaction itself, and anybody who remembers life before keeping your credit card information stored on the internet, and you actually had to go to a location, pay with a credit card, and actually sign with a piece of paper, that is the signature that authorizes the transaction. MetaMask has that same concept. You have to sign in order to execute a transaction. So in order to do that, you need the elements of MetaMask in order to pop up whenever a transaction is conducted, in order for it to mint that transaction in a hash to the blockchain. That can only really be achieved when the elements of the MetaMask are embedded directly within the hardware. So I think this is just one step closer to our year-end prediction last year about where blockchain and, I guess regular forms of payment are going to be incorporated in day-to-day transactions. Now, how long did it take companies like your grocery store or McDonald's or your hardware store, any place you would go and conduct a transaction, how long did it take for them to integrate things like Apple Pay, Google Pay, tap here with a credit card instead of signing like you normally do? These things take time.
It's going to take time. Worldwide pandemic is what it took, and then everything worked.
Well, exactly. It no touch this, and we don't want germs for that. And, I don't want to touch your dirty credit card that's been in your wallet. I get it. And that, it took different pieces of that in order to relinquish some of the security. And I don't know how much fraud has been, incorporated in since, but I'm sure it's not zero. But this all kind of circles back to our original story today. With all of these interactions taking place and all of these tokens being, executed in order to mint things to chains and, generate AI, I don't think data and the space of the internet is the problem. I think it's the electrical load that we have to really concern ourselves with. Without electricity, none of this is possible, including this podcast, by the way. So if there's much of a strain on the electrical grids, depending on where you are in the world, I think that is really what we're going to run out of first before we start talking about any of this stuff.
So 2 thoughts on that. Number one, I have reassumed my conspiracy theory battle helmet here because of what you're saying, Mike. I think that we're seeing the evolution of DeFi becoming TradFi, right? So we've gotten, the last few weeks, we've reported, you got futures on Bitcoin now. You have the Trezor passwords can now be reconstructed for those who aren't familiar with the wallets. MetaMask is reporting transactions directly to the IRS, and now they're having all the connectivity that normal banking would have. So the government sees everything. The banking system is being reconstructed in a crypto world. That's in behind the scenes for the listeners here. I originally wanted to use this as the conspiracy theory article for the week. However, to your point, Mike, infrastructure, it's still a very fragile thing. AI using up all the electricity is what Elon's talking about. To your point, it's still based on chips. We still have internet running off of undersea cables that can be cut. Like, the world is hasn't yet become resilient and durable enough in terms of the electronicization of it. The digitization of business is at a really interesting juncture right now, historically. It's susceptible. So I don't know what that means, but like to your point, Mike, a solar flare that takes out like most of global electricity production for a while, that would be a real problem. And I don't think that people are envisioning that. That sounds conspiracy, but it's it's just reality.
Well, I mean, it's a prediction of what could be, right? But it's also a risk to everything that's being built, utilizing and relying on this technology. What happens when this goes under? What happens when there is a solar flare or a man-made solar flare in a particular region of the world? How are people going to access different things that are reliant on these types of, technologies? I mean, we saw a bunch of kids go nuts when they threatened TikTok, because, they're at the gym shaking their ass and making money doing it. What happens if that goes away? Well, then their livelihood and everything that they've, worked for their entire lives goes up in flames. Same concept.
If you guys hadn't followed the news out of Brazil right now, there's a tiff going on between Elon Musk and the leadership of Brazil, because Brazil apparently had requested for Twitter X to produce data on all these private citizens who were criticizing the Brazilian government. And Musk said no. Right, he's standing up for free speech, etc. So they said they're going to shut off X in the country. So yesterday he announced he's going to bring Starlink to provide free internet, so they don't get shut off. My point is, it points to your issue there, Mike, of the fragility of things, and that there's kill switches in things, or there's natural or man-made problematic things. And I think eventually the systems that we're building become more durable. Right, it'll be hardened, if you will. Satellite, whatever. But at this point right now, the cryptoization of banking is at a point where it's at risk. I hate to say it. Like, this is people's money. And when money disappears, things like the French Revolution happen. Like, there's political unrest is always tied to economics. And so we're at a point where the economics of how crypto is evolving, I think, is something that is concerning enough.
I think too that, I was thinking about this week. We have a Wirex account, for those people that know. You can put crypto into it and you can use that like a credit card. So I've actually got a credit card, tap at the, machines, whatever. And so if you think about using your phone when, we have credit cards on our phone. So if you think about your MetaMask wallet, if it's on your phone and you have cryptocurrencies in there, then that is an easy way, isn't it, to pay for your groceries or go out for dinner, etc., without there being multiple steps in the process. And one of the things that we have talked about since the beginning on this show is that adoption of Web3 and blockchain technologies has had a steep learning curve, and that's hindered the adoption amongst the general populace. But if we're now talking about an app that can easily be installed on a phone and can be used as for transactions, so it can be transactional based now as well, then obviously that is going to increase adoption. However, we've also talked about the security of these things. People have lost millions of dollars worth of NFTs before they crashed from their wallets, and there's lots of scraping and all that gets done. So as a disclaimer around the security, but if you think about using this type of product as a credit card, this is what we're talking about with this.
So I think, to our point in the intro about the impact that this is going to have long term in the crypto world, this is basically the bankingization of crypto. Like, you're seeing the evolution of crypto becoming standardized banking right now. If you can put your credit card, as you put it, Michelle, and it's all crypto based, and you can make your payments like you normally would. Early on, that's what people complained about Bitcoin, is what it's great to have it. It's going up in value. I can't buy anything with it. And now you can.
Well, again, that's all a store of that value, right? We talked about the savings account versus the checking account. And this is where, other chains, I guess, are going to come into play, where different chains and different tokens of those chains can become the currency within that particular industry. You're going to have a fast food token that potentially could be used at all the fast food restaurants, a grocery token. Instead of having one standard currency that you can have, each of these can be their own independent economies. And, again, with the centralization of a wallet, you can easily transfer things back and forth within those elements. But I think that, again, what we need to realize here is that, you know, the hardware and the app that you talk about, Michelle, that needs to be a foundational piece within people's accessible hardwares, right? Like their phones or, you know, tablets even. But the link now with an exchange, right? And this is really the premise of this discussion. The link with the exchange is the bridge between fiat and MetaMask that was a big hurdle for people to truly understand and grasp. So if that is now smoothed out, and that is that app that makes people waffles, now you're going to see a better integration, especially when bigger companies, Walmart, you know, Costco, whenever they start to integrate the terminal element of accepting this within their locations. This is where we're going to see a much larger adoption, not just in Web3, but in crypto in its entirety. And that's where you're going to see things like Bitcoin become more of a store of value. There's going to need to be, you know, assets that are liquid and accessible within the crypto world. I'm just going to throw out this question as a rhetorical one, just to end this point. You know, what does this do for the definition between, you know, whether crypto or any of these tokenized systems are currencies or securities?
Right. That's gonna be debated, and the regulators will have their say. My point
$1
is,
million question.
we've talked about Web3 becomes the norm when people don't realize it's Web3. Back in the day, we would discuss this regularly. When your mom or grandmother can do the thing that you know how to do in the wallet, and they can do it simply, and we're approaching that, to your point, Mike. I think that this is literally just the evolution of finance. All right, so I'm going to give us a quick recap. Michelle, sorry, final comments on that?
No.
Okay. Running through the 3 stories we did this week in the AI Runs Out of Internet episode. Story number 1 was tech companies find the edge of the internet. We discussed the synthetic manufacture of training data to train the AIs, and that evolved a bit into the conversation around privacy and how people just don't have any way of protecting themselves. Story number 2 was Conspiracy Corner. Musk predicts AI smarter than people by next year. Discussed the superhuman AGI that is expected to be on scene within 12 months. That actually evolved into a conversation on the outdated school system. Don't ask me how we got there, but I loved it. And this flash story on blockchain MetaMask. Crypto is evolving into traditional banking. It's pretty clear that this is accelerating, and honestly, it's both good and bad, but it's going to happen whether we like it or not. You're now starting to see simplified tools and the integrations of crypto into regular payments. So, final comments, thoughts?
We can blame Spanner for the education reference.
Spanner. I think there may be an episode in there. Thoughts go around. Mike, final thoughts. Michelle, what do you guys think? Last comments on anything we've talked about?
I think Elon's musking the outer space skies. He's if he can drag satellites around, etc., I'm sure that he can set something up, Mike, to make sure that you keep the internet, the electricity going if there's a solar flare somewhere.
Regardless,
well, I mean, I live in Florida. We have generators anyway, right? So as long as we can extract fuel, we're fine with that. But you know, look, we talked a lot about, and there was a lot of conspiracy talk and topics that we kind of discussed today. But we're also seeing the evolution of how this technology is being exploited by some of these educational institutions too, right? We talked about a blockchain degree, a few weeks ago. Like these are all things that they're trying to get their teeth into in order to prove that there's some sense of validation. When the reality is, again, like if you really just want to understand how to start a MetaMask, you can YouTube a video. There's billions of them out there. I don't think you need to go to an institution and pay them ridiculous dollars in order to set something up that, you know, ultimately is evolving into our day-to-day culture. And it's just going to be a matter of time before it's everything. It's not just going to be 1 or 2 things. Your digital wallet will be a digital identity that you can carry from platform to platform.
So I think for my final comment, I want to point out that whether people know it or not, blockchain is becoming common. Like this is the point of this program, was to help people understand how business is evolving. The blockchainization is happening behind the scenes. It's not going to be the revolution is occurring when people aren't paying attention. Companies are doing things now on the back end that most consumers aren't aware of, and that's okay. So
it's the engine under the Ferrari hood, right?
Yeah.
You know it runs. You don't know how it's efficient, but you don't need to know how the mechanics work as long as it makes that nice sound and it's operational towards what people are getting. But it is becoming an infrastructure cornerstone for the way that some of these tech ideas are starting to evolve now, and it's good because we're 75 episodes ahead of the curve now.
I want to thank everyone for listening. As always, Spanner for the comments, Yakub for the comments. We really appreciate it, guys. We know you guys are here every week. Shout out to the Bolt community. Thank you very much for the support. We are back every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. The goal of this podcast, Business on the Block, is to discuss business evolution and how the blockchainization of business is happening, how you can take advantage of it, and what people need to know that, frankly, there's no actual business conversation around blockchain that's generally not get rich quick. And the purpose of this podcast, we call it your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. It is the AI blockchain technology evolution of business. And if people aren't paying attention, it's accelerating. So we want to thank everyone for listening and supporting. We'll be back next week. And final comments from my colleagues.
Peace out.
Bye.
Peace.